A new whistleblower has come forward on X claiming to be part of a super secret program as a child where they were taught to remote view and dealt with out of this world experiences, right? They're calling the program Stargate 2.0. Now, Stargate was a CIA program back from the 70s to study remote viewing, psychic connections, that sort of thing, right? So, I don't know. Was there another program? Were more children involved? What exactly did this person do? And why are they coming out now? They've tried to go tell their story to Congress, Inspector General, and they've been shut down. Why is that? Let's find out. If you're new to the channel, y'all, and you like content like this, please hit that subscribe button. I put out a new video every day, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do not miss a day, y'all. And please hit that like button, vetters. That really helps out the videos, okay? So thank y'all so much for the support there. And, of course, comment down below. What do you think about this whistleblower coming forward on Twitter? Let's go. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is play this Twitter space for you. Now, right here, you'll see the host, Courtney Marchesani. I can't remember how to say her name. But she has been involved in other whistleblowers come forward, just to give a little context before we jump into this. Jason Sands, if you remember him, she was dealing with him for months before he ever came forward. And this other guy named Steve, who came forward the day before Jason Sands. Now, Steve is an anonymous name, but Steve came forward to help back up Jason Sands' story as well. So, after I play you this clip, I'm actually going to play you a clip from Steve, who also came forward with his own story. Now, I included those recordings or interviews in a 3-part deep dive that I did about Jason Sands. Links in the description. Go check it out if you want to, where you can hear all of Steve's, confession as well, I guess. But I'm going to play that at the end. And I'll tell you why I'm going to play it at the end. Because you'll see. I'll explain it later. It's interesting. I definitely want to get y'all's opinion. All right, so first, let's just play this first new whistleblower. Right, it's coming out on Twitter. He's in a Twitter space with Courtney. Now, again, there's way more to this that I'm going to play, but I can't play the whole thing. So put a link in the description. Go check it out. But this is a piece I thought was important to play, kind of give you an idea. So let's just go.
This facility was something that I would kind of consider EEG mapping. So this would be with the team of people. It's not just one person now. It's kind of a team. We'd have one room where we would begin kind of just measuring some brain waves. And then we were working on bilateral stimulation. So bilateral stimulation are things like hemisync, right? If you guys are familiar with that. It's essentially putting into slightly different frequencies through each ear to create kind of this unified, top level frequency as they kind of meet up in the hemispheres of the brain. There's not just auditory, there is visual bilateral stimulation too. Same thing with your eyes. And there's kinesthetic as well, right? Just using your body. So we would be basically monitored, or our EEG and brain waves would be monitored as they would apply these different methods. And I think we all kind of figured out what would work best. Like maybe this frequency range, which is slightly different, would help me get into a delta state, or, this type of thing with a visual aid for the bilateral stimulation would help me get to a different state. The other thing I will add here is there were substances being administered. No idea what they were. I would love to know. But with that, my exact kind of literal time frame of every single experience here is a bit more fragmented. It's much more of like probably how someone with PTSD kind of looks back at their experiences. They're a lot more fragmented and kind of broken up. And that's primarily my experience and memories here too. But that EEG mapping phase was kind of phase one. We did a lot of that. There was a secondary testing. This was in a special room, completely unique for this test. The only thing that I can kind of describe it as is they were looking either at maybe potentially some photonic outputs or something with the brain that would look. We would get this basically the spreadsheet that we would look. The only thing I can even reference it to is path integral theory and quantum mechanics. where we kind of measure some, photonic arrays for, calculations, probabilities on, what would happen next in the quantum wave function, by, mapping like the easiest way. I'm not a physicist, so I'll leave that there. But we would be comparing metrics on axes that involve the word scatter and array. So potentially some connection there. This only happened a few times, but this was just a very serious test. I would just have some, headgear on. I'd be looking at a certain monitor. I'd be asked to do some different things. One would be visualize. One would be, think this. And basically, they were kind of measuring, some metric that came out as an output after we were doing those tasks. So really, like the first maybe 6 months of this was much more preparation. It was kind of much more of like, hey, we're finding this pathway that's your path of least resistance to, do the work that we'll do then. And so what would happen when we're actually doing the work, right? What was I doing? Where is all this going? What we were doing was basically what I would call Stargate 2.0. The reason I call it 2.0 and the reason that I want to be careful with what I even talk about here is it's clear to me the protocols that we were using, the methods, the kind of flow down chart to get to where, Ingo Swann would call the astral or, the parallel, right? Outside of your body, having that kind of out of body consciousness experience. We were doing it a completely different way. I don't want to say completely different, but when I look back at the declassified files, it's like, that's like riding your bike to work. The stuff that we were doing was like driving a Maserati to work, right? Like they'll both get you there, but one has a lot more, power and kind of amplification with it. What it basically looked like from the outside looking in would be hypnosis, right? We started everything off with a relaxation exercise. We didn't call it hypnosis. Before the relaxation exercise, we would go through what we would call tasking, right? These weren't called missions. These weren't called anything else. This was our tasking. And primarily in most of these instances, my tasking would be to perform a function that we called retrieval. And it was retrieval of information. This is going to sound incredulous, but the best justification and understanding that I have of what we were doing.
Pay attention to the way he just said that word, incredulous. And I'll discuss that. You know what? Let's discuss it now. It's interesting the way he said that. I've never heard it said that way, incredulous. Is it because he's reading? He doesn't know that word? Or has he been pronouncing that word the whole time? Is that how you pronounce the word and I'm wrong? Right? I'll get into this at the end, but really pay attention to his voice and how he sounds for the clip that I'm going to play you later, right? Just really take in what his voice sounds like. So if I played another clip, would you be able to recognize him? If that makes sense, right? And I think this guy is reading a script or something. I'm not saying that makes his story any less believable or not. I'm just saying, in my opinion, he's reading something, and that the way he said that word is a clue, in my opinion. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
Was essentially collecting intelligence, on NHI, and then trying to basically establish a thought projection or a conduit loop back down to bring that information to whoever that I was being trained with or working with at that time. So each tasking mission kind of had these own parameters and protocols. What I mean by that is there was dangers to this that would be communicated to me. There was missteps that you can kind of make as you take this out of body type of journey.
And he's a child? They're doing this to him as a child. Our government, the United States government, is illegally experimenting on children to connect with non-human intelligence.
That looked like, potentially not entangling with something, not looking or viewing something, and making basically just kind of the roadmap for how this is going to work. The way that it actually felt, like how could I, recreate this experience, to you who's never experienced it? It lied on visualization and it lied on perspectives. What I mean by that is if you can kind of visualize a scene in your mind right now, think of your, outside of your house, right? Now hold that. Now create another frame and try to picture that same setting from the third person or from a perspective above it. And then, keep on going and see how many perspectives you can hold. Think of it kind of as looking at something in the first person, but simultaneously having an anchor point, we would call them, or a reference point to what the third person was, and then taking a step above and a step above. So completely different kind of consciousness protocols that we were doing, which I would call remote viewing, but we were not remote viewing targets, like, hey, here's this coordinates, go do this. It was much more of this step process where it was relaxation exercise, bilateral stimulation of both hemispheres of the brain. You kind of create this loop or gap that we would talk about, where you could visualize. You would step through the center of that, and then therefore your consciousness, so to speak, was behaving or at least interacting to what I would understand as a different density or a different frequency of consciousness. This is all going to sound completely outlandish to you if you haven't explored, or if you're at the understanding that consciousness here, right, our experience of life is local. And what I mean by local, I mean like produced in the brain, right? I joke sometimes that I think science is still trying to blame consciousness on something, versus actually explore, what that is. And again, the overlays and the parallels of the spiritual concepts here, I don't want to get into. I just really want to talk about, the factual physicality, so to speak, of my experience. But we were being tasked to do this. So it was, again, not going to get into the crazy details of what that looked like and, some of those instructions. But that would be my tasking, right? Tasking was usually retrieval. We get there with using strong visualization, holding multiple perspectives of something simultaneously, and then, basically establishing things as like a conduit, so we could actually get that information back. There was a problem that we had where you could essentially get to this place and you have all the information when you're in this place, but it's in that journey back where the conduit can kind of become compromised and you no longer retain the information. So really, what was I being used for, or why was I, picked for this? Probably something genetically, within the brain, or something. I think it spans much more beyond. This was just a natural, we kind of found you thing. I think there's some underlying components that would make someone, have a larger aptitude for this. But the idea was to communicate information two ways, not just one way, back and forth, and then actually having the ability to retain that information. So the same way, if we were trying to take something up, you kind of lose it on the way up. You had your own deals to kind of retain it on your journey up. Same deal is kind of coming back to your body, whatever information that you had, the conduit can kind of become contaminated and you lose the detail of whatever information you're trying to come back, whether that was, a target, or whether that was what did you see, or whether, what did it look like oftentimes. There was another experience that I had a little earlier on that I did skip over, but I do want to certainly talk about. This was really early. So this was, as I was going through what I would consider the mapping exercises, which kind of, stood it up and made it possible for you to perform these functions. I had an unannounced interaction with what I could best describe as recovered technology. It was not a craft. It was something completely different. The way that this happened was in one of my just normal routine scheduled sessions. As I entered the room, one of the original psychologists was present along with about 8 other people, all dressed civilian, right? 2 people in each corner of the room, kind of like serving as security, 2 people down the hallway, and then another person at the door. And then there was another female figure in there with me that was kind of talking through this experience. So I just walk into the situation. I have no idea that I should be expecting anything differently. They kind of, basically try to calm my nerves, like, oh, hey, this is just normal. These people just want to be here today. We want to show you something, and we want you to tell us what you think about it. And it was very eerily casual, right? It was not, here's what you're seeing, here's what you're about to see, this is what it is. It was just, hey, we're going to show you something. I want you to tell me what you think about it. It was very casual. In the center of the room, there was essentially this think giant briefcase, right? Like almost kind of looks like if you're at a concert, the way that they'd pack up concert materials, but had this very special case that also kind of served as this, like holding point. And this, I just see this thing in the center of the room. I could tell there's like something sitting up there, and there's a cover over it. It was looked like a blanket, but it was a very weird blanket, right? They removed that off there, and then what I saw was about 24-inch diameter sphere. The sphere looked crystallized. It had a defined outside shell, but it was incredibly translucent. The sphere had a light source within it, and the sphere, to the best of my explanation, the best way I can articulate this to anybody, had consciousness in it, or it behaved as if it was conscious. The inside of the sphere would kind of swirl around. It looked much more of just like this floating ball of light than anything else. But again, in this state, I could see it clearly had this defined shell. And I was instructed to look into it. And as I would look into it, I would see kind of the internal structure of this, crystallized sphere kind of shift, almost as like it's interacting with my eye movements. And it was terrifying. it was frankly terrifying. I just had this sensation that this was, something much more complex than I could probably ever understand. And there was this sensation like, the mirror that you're looking in is looking back to you. Totally terrifying. Again, it was just kind of more of a walk down session at this point. This lasted honestly 5 minutes. And then it was just like, oh, hey, you don't have to do anything. Don't be weirded out. I was told it picks who it likes, with no follow-up context to that. And then, the shield of the blanket was put back over the thing, and it was just a lot normal. We switched to the other office, and it was just, I never had an interaction like that again. I never saw the team of people that came in, with this sphere. Never saw that woman that was kind of like, she acted like she was the one kind of responsible for it, and she was kind of talking to the main figure in the council that I had that was asking me those questions. They were kind of like talking in the background, and that was hands down weird. I had no other follow-up interactions with that sphere. Never had any explanation on it, but I do feel that it's worthwhile mentioning because I cannot explain to you, the sensations that kind of came over me in that experience. Doing this type of basically out of body consciousness travel work that we were doing, felt much more like lucid dreaming, right? Just having a very visualized dream. And that's how it was kind of explained to me, right? Like all of this was explained to a child. So it was explained in a way that a child would understand it, right? Like relaxation exercise. There's these tones that we kind of put on over our ears that just makes the dream good, right? And they kind of walk you through this process more with analogies and metaphors than it's like, hey, this is exactly the process of what's going on. Like I still have many more questions than I have answers. And that's coming from someone who, I'm raising my hand and saying like, all of this I would repeat in the space to Congress. Again, to reference, I've already tried to contact ICIG. I've hit every roadblock, possible. And as Courtney's kind of stated, there is a paper trail here, and there's a paper trail that, raises a lot more questions and kind of points to things than it doesn't. So again, very frustrating space to really be in, not only because this is a somber experience, kind of just being utilized in almost a criminal fashion for this as a child. And then, not knowing what to do with it for the most of your life. So again, you kind of dissociate away. A little bit more, I want to be very careful with like the exact aptitudes and what we were kind of doing within the program. Again, just before I, take some, first steps out into this space. And then two, I don't want to, push the boundaries where things get, so incredulous that it's tough for people to track it.
I'm sorry, what? Incredulous again? He tried to say it there at the end. So I'm going to play another clip, but let me just see if I understand what I just heard. We drugged up children and put them in contact with a non-human intelligence, asked them to perform strenuous mental and physical tasks dealing with a power they had no clue about. And this was all happening secretly behind the scenes on American soil by our American government. Wow. Okay. We're drugging up children and putting them in contact with aliens. That doesn't sound good. If that's true, let's be real. Our hands should be up in the air. Forget what they talked to. I don't care. That's a line too far, right? I mean, come on. What are we talking about here? Was this guy really part of this program that he's claiming? And are there other people who are going to come forward as being part of this program? Special people, right? I don't know. I'm going to leave it to y'all. Y'all decide. Again, link in the description. Go check it out. Go check out the whole thing. Now, remember. You know what? Actually, real quick, let me show you this. This is his Twitter. The guy that just spoke. Lightbringer. Merciful Martin. He has almost 4,000 followers. He's been on here since 2015. We're in this together. 333 Mystic something. Airplane. I don't know what that is. Yeah, you know. This is from February 29th of this month. Oh, well, that's a lot. But on January 15th, this message will save someone's life. On January 15th, 2023, I gave up. And the recording you just heard, that was within the last 48 hours. Okay? So just keep that in mind. On January 15th, 2023, so over a year ago, right? A year and a half ago, I gave up. My life was falling apart. I was overwhelmed trying to keep a failing business alive with $0 and no way to repay my investor. 2 months earlier, I discovered my fiance had an affair with her boss. I was devastated. I was working 70-hour weeks to give us a chance at a life I thought was the American dream, but that dream was slowly killing me as much as it was her. The time in between was filled with flashbacks of my battle with lymphoma and chemotherapy from age 21. I made it out in remission, but a year of watching my body fall apart in an oncology ward while my peers were beginning college made my soul tired. I tried to find solace in booze and sleep until my dreams turned to nightmares on repeat. I was a firefighter previously, and the same call involving 2 children was burned into my mind. I was always too late in my dreams, no matter how hard I screamed or fought. To top it off, new flashbacks from childhood involving abuse akin to MK Ultra pierced in between what little time I had the energy left for. I couldn't run from my own mind. That night, I sent a note to my friends and family apologizing for my faults and failures. I reminded myself how big of a piece of shit I was and how big of a mess I made. I took my SIG P365 outside, placed the barrel to my head, and pulled the trigger. I never imagined that this would be my last moment at only age 27. The gun misfired. I froze. I thought I was dead. By the time I figured out what happened, the police made it to my door. 8 minutes had passed after I sent the note, and about 45 seconds since I pulled the trigger. The gun had never misfired as long as I owned it. Not once. Now, they get into a year ago, God saved my life, gave me a second chance, metaphysical, right? I mean, there's a lot there. But look, I'll put his Twitter there. That's interesting. Right? So he's had some issues. And then 19 hours ago, that's what I played for y'all. I have attempted to reach the ICIG, Arrow, and many other channels multiple times and have been stonewalled. This is my firsthand experience in the program. NHI to consciousness to my experience with recovered technology directly. Now remember, he said recovered technology that is not a UFO. And that's interesting. What is it? We always talk about UFOs and UFOs and UFOs, but what if we're recovering other technologies I want to know about? Like a doohickey zapper, zippy zappy thing. I don't know, something, right? It's always like in the movies, it's always something that you open up and it glows. And it will, do something crazy, right? Like, is that what he's looking? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't know. Talking about farming. I don't know. Guys. But look, I'll put a link in the description. Now, let's get to this clip that I wanted to play for y'all. This is that guy, Steve. Okay, who also came forward through Courtney. Remember, Jason Sands, Steve, now this guy, all going through Courtney here. Now, listen to how Steve sounds. He's also anonymous. Steve is not his real name. Right, and the other guy, Lightbringer, Merciful Martin, right, not their real names.
And so my old boss, he was like a Harvard grad, super smart guy, wicked smart. He's from Boston. And I tell him, and he's like, what program is it? I tell him the program. He's like, oh, okay.
If you listen to that guy for a while and you listen to the other guy, they kind of sound like the same guy, just on different energy levels, if that makes sense. This guy sounds more, pumped up. But they sound the same. They talk the same. Is it because they're reading from the same thing? And again, I don't think the other guy was reading the entire time, because you could tell the difference between, there was moments where it did seem he was just, raw, right? And other parts where it, to me, clearly seemed scripted. Again, that doesn't mean anything. I'm just saying. Maybe you just had notes. It's interesting. I don't know. It's just interesting. And these two guys kind of sound the same to me. Because remember, they're anonymous. But I don't know. Maybe they are separate people. Remember, this guy's life also fell apart. Steve here. I don't know if you remember, but if you remember this guy, and if you haven't listened to him, his life fell apart too. Right? It's interesting. I feel bad. Like when I, reading that other guy's stuff, the Lightbringer, Merciful Martin, his wife cheating on him and all that. I mean, that's horrible. His business, I mean, that's cancer. I mean, Jesus, poor guy. Right? And then on top of that, he starts to have these dreams about an MK Ultra event, right? He's about to lose everything, right? Can't repay his investors. I wonder where he's at now. It's been 1.5 years. Has all that been repaid? I guess it's in that post, right? I don't know. Interesting. But I think Steve and him sound a little similar, or at least come from the same group of people, or something about them sounds similar or the same or something, right? So I don't know. Just something to think about. I'll put links in the description. You can check it out for yourself. And, see what you think. Here, real quick, I'll play a little more.
And I tell him this message, right? And then he says, you know what? He's like, maybe this message is like from the future, right? Like,
okay, so there's that guy. Let me get back to this.
But going back into it, out of body experiences, we would have tasking before.
Okay, so it's a little bit different recording.
Like when it comes back,
it's just the way they talk. It's the cadence. It's the tone. There's something there. I don't know. Y'all tell me. Links in the description. Go check it out for yourself. What do y'all think? This new guy trying to come forward, and he's getting stonewalled. Why is he getting stonewalled? What's the reason? It's because he doesn't have a military background. I mean, he said he was a firefighter. I don't know. Why? Why doesn't he talk to Steve and these guys? I don't know. Y'all tell me. Is this going to make a movement? Nobody's talking about this guy. Is it? Why is his story any less important than someone else's? What's going on here? Y'all tell me. All right, guys. We'll see you on tomorrow's video. Remember, every day is a gift, y'all. Peace.